Hello everyone, and today we're going to learn how to implement Google Admob on Android platform. And currently Google provides 4 or 6 ads formats, so you can choose any ads format based on your app content and favorite format. First, let's go ahead to create a new project. For the main activities, we can choose this activity for the simplest code generated. But now I prefer the empty activity. Click on that and hit the next button. Right here, name it as a ads app. And for programming language, I'm choosing Java for implementation, and then hit the finish button. Now the code is generated automatically, and before we are able to use a mobile ads SDK, so make sure the build.creator file in the project levels, and in all sections, and in all project sections, just put this line. It seems like a Google method, something like that. And then just next move to the build.creator file too, but it is for the app level to add a add dependency. So let's go ahead to the browser and find this page. Admin did all related to Android Google API. We can find these dependencies in this page, which is on the release section. You can see here. So I'm going to copy this latest. So now let's go back to our project and paste it in the single quote. But just don't forget add the implementation before that. And then we will see the scenes label link over here. Just hit that and it will download the dependency. Now before jump to the code, we have to do one more thing. Add the metadata in the XML node into the Android manifest file. And this inside the application node, we will put the metadata that contain an app ID. And we can find these lines of the XML from the Google page. And for safe testing ads, just put the sample app ID that they have provided in the comment here. You also can find your app ID in Admob page. Then just go to the specific app and select to the app settings tab. Then you will see the app ID over here. Just copy that. Because this video related to the next ads video, so I'm going to create a class to control and support all my ads. This means I can maintain the code effectively, save my time and fixing bugs. Now I'm going to name it as ads nature class. Here I'm going to create a constructor that is support a parameter for application context when we initiate the object. So right now I'm going to create a variable to store the context, because we will use this variable later in the other methods. Before we can do anything, we have to initialize the mobile ads SDK, and the callback is useful for the mediation ads, but now just leave it. And next we're going to create a method to support the banner ads, and I'm gonna name it as a create ads that support 2 parameters. The first one is for ad view, and the last one is for resource ID. And now we're going to instate the ads request. And then we call the set ad view listener. The listen callback methods means we can handle additional actions when the user performing click ads or ads can be loaded. Now I'm going to implement on ad loads and ads load to fall only. And over here, when the ads finish load, I'm going to toast a message. And when the ads can't be loaded, I'm going to show the reason why the ads can't be loaded in here. And this callback method I usually get error code number 3. It means that Admob not always provide ads every request. I remember that in the previous dependency version, it provide only the error code as an integer, but now it just changed into the class. Okay, finally we have started to load add request. So we just implement the backend, but now we not yet define where it should be displayed. So let's go to the REST folder and then open the layout XML file. And in here, I'm going to wrap the text view and the app view in the linear layout. So to insert the app view into the layout, I would like to go to the page and copy this snapshot code and then paste it back. I think we should remove this text view. And for the ad side, I prefer the smart banner instead of banner because it have a flexibility based on the device screen size. And here I'm put the ID to app view layout as the app view and put the simple ads unit ID. So now let's go back to the main activity. Now I'm going to create a variable in the global, then pass it the value referenced by the app view ID. So now let's instance new objects of the ads nature class. And then we call the method create ads. And resource ID, we don't need that because we have ad in the app view already. So now let's remove that. And now we finish implement banner ads. So let's run it. Right now we have finished create banner ads. So we're gonna create a new method for implementing interstitial ads. And this method gonna return value as a interstitial ads type. And then we're gonna instance add request. Because of this ads does not have a layout, so we have to create instance interstitial ads object. Then we set the unit ID, and over here we set the sample unit ID. So we just go to the browser and copy that. Paste it. And then the last one, we have to load add request. And this object also have a ad listener for implement additional actions, but I'm not going to implement it. Now let's go to the main activity layout and add a button. When we click the button, we're gonna show the ad full screen over the activity. And in the button, we gonna put the ID for reference. Right now, let's go back to the main activity class and let's find the reference button by the ID. I then set the click listener for the click button. Before we can show the ad to the user, we have to create ad, means we preload the ads. And on the click event, we're gonna check if it's ready to load then we can show the ads. And this block code is useful when we have two activities and we want the ad display before a second activity launch. And I will implement it later on, but now just test this app first. Now I'm gonna click the button, and here it is. Okay, right now that's implementing when I hit the button to open a new activity. And before launching a new activity, I'm gonna show the ad first. Now let's go ahead, create a new activity. And I'm gonna choose an empty activity. And I name it as a second activity. And it's will create a new class and a new XML layout. Now let's go to add signature class and may change something a little bit. And I'm gonna change this to the global variable. And in this case, we're gonna put the static keyword, and this would help me to share the value entire application. Then I'm gonna create a new get property to get instance of interstitial ads, and this just return the object. Okay. Now let's go to the second activity class and instance new object of a ad signature. But here, we're not going to create a new interstitial ads again. We just get the instance of interstitial ad property that we just create at the moment. Why I'm not creating new ads object here? That's because of the ad objects have been loaded in the first activity already, so no need to create it once again. And here I'm gonna check if it's load ready, then we're gonna show the ad to the user. Now let's go to the first activity, and I'm gonna modify some code on the click event to open the second activity. Now let's run it. Now hit the button, open the second activity. So did you see that? The ad is just shown. And if I close this ad, the second activity is behind it. After the ad load ready, if you hit the button in the first activity once again, it will not show the ad. To handle this, we have to overriding on resume methods and instantiate new ads object. Now let's go to the first activity and change some code. And I'm gonna declare the ad signature object to the global scope. And then call the method create interstitial ads once again on resume method. Now let's run this application. So for the first, I'm gonna hit the button and it's gonna show the ad. And then I close the second activity and hit the button once again, and the ad still pop up and display on the screen device.
This video we're going to implement native template ads, and the main reason for the placing native ads in the app because we can customize the ads that could enhance user experience and help us increase more engagement from the user, which means that UI is better than the banner ads if we compare to the banner or interstitial ads. For getting started, or you want to reduce time designing and implementing, I recommend you to choose native template is the best option for implementing. For the first step, let's go ahead to find the Android native templates in the Git repository. or you can go to this Android Google page, and I will put link in the description, and then just hit the download as a zip file. And I already downloaded into my local machine, so just extract the file, and then let's go back to your Android project, go to file and hit new, and then import module, and then just go and find the directory file that you have extracted and hit the OK button, and then just wait a little bit for progressing the dependency. After the process is finished, then just go to the build.gradle in the app level, and then place the implement project and the name of the module. And then we hit the sync link to synchronize the project dependency. And then let's go to Ads Manager class, and we're gonna create a new methods for implementing native templates add request. And this method, I'm going to name it as a create unified ads and without any return type. And this method we support two parameters. For the first one, I'm going to pass it as an integer. That integer is the reference from the resource string ID, which have the value of unit ID, the sample unit ID that we're going to pass it from the string.xml file. And the second parameter is support for the listener. And this listener, we're going to create a new abstract class that gonna inherit from the add_listener class and a static interface. The reason that I want to create a new class and extend and implement it from the interface, because I want to combine these two listeners into one class. And in this listener allow us to implement additional actions inside each methods. And interface have methods that support when the add is load successful. And in this point, you're gonna know that add_listener also contain a methods onLoaded. It means that when the add is loaded. But why should we still implement from the interface? And the answer is because of onAddLoaded methods is not going to work when the native add is load successful. So just remember that the native add has its own assets and its own format specific listeners. That's why we have to implement from the interface, which contain a method support when the add is loaded. And right now I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to name it as add unified listening. And the superclass, I'm going to extend it from add_listener, and the interface is implement it from onUnifiedAddLoadListener, and then hit the OK button. And then I'm going to change this class into the abstract class, and then just leave it nothing in here. Then let's go back to the Add Manager class, and I'm going to pass the name of the class in this parameter. And then I'm going to instance the builder of addLoader. For the methods for unified native adds is support when the native add is already loaded successful. So I'm going to pass the value of the listener, and for the listener I'm also pass the same value. And then we're going to build the addLoader. For the last statement, we're going to load the add request. And here we have a overloading methods. For the method which support only add request, that means we can get only one ads per request. But in difference, if we use the method load ads which have the two parameters, The first is add request and the second is the number of add requests. It means that we can request batch of the ads, and the maximum of ads requests we have 5 for maximum. So I'm going to use the first one. And then I'm going to show the ads in the main activity. So I'm going to open the main activity XML file. And then I'm going to copy this. And pass in here to create a template view. Then let's go to the main activity class, and I'm going to call the method that we have created at the moment in the ads manager object. And the first parameter, we support the string, the sample unit ID, and I'm going to find that sample unit ID in this web page. So I'm going to copy that and go to the values and open up the strings.xml file, and I'm going to create a new key value pair of the string, and I'm going to name it as ads_native_uid, and the value I'm going to paste it back. Then let's go back to the main activity, and the first parameter that I'm going to pass is the resource string. And then the second parameter that I'm going to overriding the methods on unify add load. And inside there, I'm going to find the reference, the template view. In the XML file, the layout, I have put the ID as my template. And then I'm going to set the main background color in white color. And in here, to prevent the memory leaking, so we have to check the condition when the activity is destroyed, and we're going to destroy the Unify Native Add too. And for the last one, don't forget to set the native Unify Ads into the view. So let's run this application, and I'm using the real device for debugging. I'm going to open the apps for the mirroring, that it will show the screen from my phone into the PC or the screen. Okay, now it's shown as a small template, and if you want to change this into the medium size, so go to layout and change the template size to the medium one. Okay, right now we finished implementing on the native add both templates with the small size and the medium size.
And this time I'm going to implement the native ads in the Recyclerview, and I will use the previous project to implementing it. In Recyclerview, I'm going to mix with the other data, that the sample data with the native ads. Now let's go ahead to add the dependency into the Gradle file. There are 3 Gradles. We have to add the 3 Gradle. The first one is for the Recyclerview, and the second one is Carview, and the last one is for the third-party library for display the image. So now I'm going to click the sync now link in here to download the dependencies. After sync successfully, so let's go ahead to create a new layout file so I'm going to name it as Carview employee, and this design time I'm going to speed it up, and the source code I will put link in the description so you can download it, but in this time I'm going to speed it up. Okay, now we finished creating XML file and the view we have designed it. This we will put the image and the text, email and the name. Now we're going to create a view holder for the whole this card because we will implementing in the Recyclerview, so we need the view holder for embed this card into the Recyclerview. So now I'm going to create a new class and I'm going to name it as emp view holder. That the superclass is stands from Recyclerview holder. And then I'm going to create a field for storing the text view and the image view. And over here we have to find a view ID, find the reference view by ID. So I'm going to find the text view name. and then just close it. And then we're going to create the add card. So I'm going to create new layout file, and I'm going to name it as add template small. And over here we're going to call the template view. And now we have finished create a template view for add item. So now I'm going to create a new class for add template view holder. I'm going to extend the class from the Recyclerview holder. We call it template view, so I'm going to create a field for template view, and now we're going to set the template view, find the template view by ID. And here I'm going to set the style. This is optional, you can set or not, it's up to you. Then we're going to set the style into the template view. And over here we're not yet done. We have to create another method to set the ads into the template view. So I'm going to create a new method, set unify native add. And the parameter is the unify native ads. Now we have done the add template view holder. So I'm going to close this class, and we're going to create a Recyclerview adapter. So I'm going to create a class, name it as Recycler adapter, and extend from the Recyclerview adapter. And then we're going to implement the method. So in this adapter we support all the data, I mean the normal data, and the other one is the native add data. So we're going to create a static integer for define the type of the native adds or the normal data. And then I'm going to check the condition. If the view type is type adds, then I'm going to call the view, inflate the layout, and over here we're going to pass the context from the constructor when we instance the object of Recycler adapter. So I'm going to create a constructor, and the parameter is context. And now we can use the context, and then I'm going to inflate it from the layout. we call the layout that we have created. This is the ads type, so I'm going to call the layout ads. After we finish, we're going to return the new object of the view holder. The view holder of ads we have created already. Then we're going to call this and place the view into the constructor. And then the other one, if we get a view, another view, I mean the data view. So I'm going to copy this line. And then we're going to change this one to the normal template and name it as View EMP, represent as the employee data. And then I'm going to return it back as a view holder. And then we're going to implement in the on-bind view holder. And over here we have to overriding the method to get a type, get view type. The get view type is came from the data that we pass. We're going to pass it from the activity. I'm going to create a collection for storing all the ads and the data. I'm going to create a array list. And the type, I have a two type. I mean that the ads type and the normal. So I'm going to put it as an object because all the class that it extends from the object type. Okay, then I'm going to use this the variable to define the view type. And here we got the position, so I'm going to put the position, the index, and if it instead of unified ads, and then I'm going to return it as the type ads, and then the other is the type normal. And the get item count, I'm going to return all the data side. Let's go back to the on-bind view holder. I'm going to create a new class for storing the employee data. So I'm going to create new class, and then I'm going to create an employee class. And the field, it have a name, email, and the IMEI URL. And then I'm going to create the getter setter. Okay, now we have done, so I'm going to close that. And the employee data, I will get it from the JSON data file in the asset folder. But now I'm going to implement this on the bind view holder first. Check if the view type equal to add type. Then I'm going to call the view holder. I'm going to casting the holder into the add template view holder. And then we're going to set the view holder, set the native add into the view holder that we get from the data. We have to casting to the unified add native ads. Then we're going to return it. Here we're going to call the object employee, and we're going to get it from the data. By the position. But in this, we're going to casting it to the employee, and then the view holder, we're going to call the employee view holder, and here we're going to casting the holder into the view holder of employee. And then we're going to set the property, and over here we have to change the modifier
there's a modifier in here to the public because I created this class outside the adapter class, so I have to put this into the public so we can access that property. Then I call the get name, and the next is email. I'm going to set text from the email, and the last one is the pixel, so I'm going to set it into the image view. And here we're going to change the load, the URL, so I'm going to get it from the employee, get the image URL and the placeholder. I'm gonna remove it. Now we have done the on-bind view holder. Now we finished all these methods. We not yet set the data from outside this class. When we instance the object, we cannot set any data into this property. So I'm going to create another method for set the data. And the other one, we have to set the add into the data collection. Unify net to ads, and then we're going to set into the data. And over here we will see the ads is not mixed with the data, because after I set the data and then I will call this method, it will appending the data into the last Recyclerview items. But this one is just for example. You can random it into this data. It depends on your algorithm, but this one just for example. So let's go back to the main activity, and then I'm going to create a new method for read the data, for read the JSON data. So before we do that, I'm going to create a new folder, new directory for storing the raw file. And I'm going to copy the sample JSON data. And here is the sample data. We have an object like this. So I'm going to read from that. Create a string builder for storing the JSON string. We're going to get from the resource file, open the raw resource, and we're going to call the employee, and I'm going to read it into the buffer reader. And here we put the Unicode UTF-8. We're going to put the finally blocks if the input stream, if not null, and then we're going to close that. And the last one, we have to return the into the string. Now let's go to find the Recyclerview. We not yet put the Recyclerview, and I'm going to put the Recyclerview into the activity second in here. In the previous project we have empty activity in here, so I'm going to call the Recyclerview widget and place the ID. Then let's go back to the main activity class, and then we're going to place the recycler ID in here.
After that, I'm going to call the linear layout manager. For the orientation, I'm going to put the vertical. Now I'm going to set the manager into the Recyclerview. And then we're going to call the adapter Recyclerview adapter. And we put the context. In here I'm going to set the adapter data. So I'm going to call the adapter set data. But in here we accept the collection of the employee. And over here we have only read as a string. So we have to convert the JSON string into the collection of the employee. So I'm going to create another method for returning the collection of the employee. So now I'm going to call the method, the below methods, JSON string, and I'm going to put into the JSON array. And now I'm going to loop the JSON array. And now we will get the object, the JSON object. And over here we're going to create a object instead the new objects of the employee. And then I'm going to set the property. It have a name over here, so I'm going to get it from the JSON object, and the field is depend on the key in here. So I'm going to get the first name and place in here, and the email, I'm going to set the email. Place it over here, and then the last one is the set the IMAG URL. Okay, and then after that, when we get each employee, we have to add into the collection. So I'm going to create a new collection as in array list, and I will add it into the array list. And then after that, we have to return the employees. Then we're going to call this method set data and place inside here. It will show the data, all the employees, but we're not yet implementing the native ads into the Recyclerview. So let's go ahead to create a new collection list that's storing the unified ads. And over here we will use the app manager. In the app manager we have implement the create unified ads, but in this one we not support the number of request type. So in here I'm going to create another overloading method. So I'm going to copy this one and create a new one, and I'm going to put this first parameter as the number of ads over here, and then I'm going to change this method into the load ads, because load ad can accept the second parameter as the number of ad requests. So I'm going to put add number request. I'm going to define the method into this add listener. I'm creating a new field add loader. We're going to generate the getter setter, and then close it. And then we're going to modify in here. We call listening set loader, add loader.
Okay, let's go back to the activity, this scan activity. I'm choosing implement in the main activity, but we have to implement in this scan activity. So I'm going to copy this one, copy this line of code, and place into this scan activity. And over here, and this method too. Now let's call the add manager, and going to call this one number request adds 2, and the second one is the resource ID. So I'm going to copy from the main activity class the resource ID. We're going to override the methods in the add listening, and over here when the add is load success, then I'm going to add into the collection. And if the add is load already, I mean that when we request to, when the add is load all, then I'm going to set into the adapter. I mean it set the data into the collection data. So I'm going to call the add loader that we have created inside this listening. We get add loader, and then we check the condition. If it's finished, then I'm going to set into the adds. We have to change this into the final. So right now we have finished in the coding, so let's go and run this application. Then I'm going to open the second activity. Okay, add is not show because the second activity we read, but we not yet write into the string builder. So I'm going to write into the string builder. And over here we not yet set into the adapter, so that the Recyclerview cannot display by the adapter. So we have to set the Recyclerview into the adapter. Okay, and then let's go to the adapter. The data, I mean that we have to notify dataset when we add the data into the item. It means that when we add the data into the Recyclerview, we have to notify the dataset. Okay, now let's open up this second activity. Okay, now it's display all the data, but the last one will display the item of the ads. This one have a many space, I think because of the designing template in here. Its height is match parent, so I have to change it to the wrap content. I think it should be displayed properly. Okay, so now you can implement the ads into the Recyclerview, and over here you can support the data inside the Recyclerview. The purpose today is going to change those items with the offset ads to display in each. For example, we're gonna show ads for every 3 items or something. And I hope you check my previous video so that you won't get any confused what we're going to do right now. So without further ado, let's get started. Firstly, we're gonna create a method which is for sending the request to the API. And the APIs that we're going to consume is the fake API, which we can find in this website. And we're gonna use this endpoint to retrieve the employee data to display in the Recyclerview. Okay, to make HTTP request in Android, we're going to use the Valet library, and we're going to search for that by typing Valet Android Gradle. And then you will see this one. And we're gonna click this link, and then we're gonna scroll down and copy this line.
And after that, we're gonna pass it into the creator file in the app level. Then we click the sync link here. We're gonna wait a moment to download the dependency. Okay, now our app is need internet permission to make access to the API. So then we're gonna go to the Android manifest file, and then we're gonna insert uses internet permission. Okay, now we're gonna create a method in a second activity class to make a network request. So let's open the second activity class. Let's call that send request with no return value. In this case, we will not making the singleton class to manage the request queue. So then we're gonna instantiate request queue object wallet dot new request queue, and then we put the context. Then we're gonna create an object string request by saying string request equal to new string request. In this constructor, we have to pass some parameters. The first one, which is the methods or HTTP verb that we're going to request, and that's gonna be get request. And then the second is the API endpoint that we're going to request, and we're gonna copy the URL link from here. So we're gonna choose this one for request delay, because I want to show how we actually organize the data between those data and the add request with the delay long process background. Then we're gonna place in here. After that, the last are the listener, which are we can listen the events that we make the network request success and fail. So we're going to say a new response listener and then tap, and it's gonna automatically complete and overriding the methods. And this methods, when we request successfully, it's gonna drop the data back as a string in here. But we're gonna leave it a moment, and then to get an error information, we're gonna implement another anonymous class. Let's say respond.error. So we're gonna toast a message that error. Let's say toast. And then for the message, we're gonna say error.getMessage. Then to make a request network happen, we're gonna add a string request to the request queue. Now we're gonna call this method on somewhere else in onCreate method. So let me place in here, because we know that when the first launch the activity, it's gonna call the onCreate methods. Okay, now this request is gonna make in the background process, but we need to handle cancel when the add is exit or stop working. To do that, we have to overriding a method which is called onStop in the activity to cancel this request. Okay, we're gonna check this request queue is null first before we cancel, but we can't choose that object. Now we have to change that object into the global scope. In here. To be able to cancel, we need to set tag to the string request. Let's say set tag T. And then we're gonna cancel all the request queue which have this tag. Okay, so now we're gonna comment this line of code, the adapter set data, because we're gonna set the data once we successfully made the network request. And then we're gonna make some change inside the getEmployee method because we want to convert those response JSON formats into the object class. Alright, so this method is gonna support parameter, which is a JSON string. If we look back to the format data that gonna respond, the employee information is in the array of field data. So to get that field, we're gonna create a new JSON object and place the string in the constructor. Okay, we have cast the string into the JSON. So now we can get data field from that. Job, get string, and data. That is the field name. And this will get a JSON array format. So let's create another JSON array object. And we're going to pass this into the constructor. Okay, now we can get all of those data, but this data seems so small. So let's add a couple collection into that for testing. And then we come back to the response methods. We're gonna call the adapter.setData. In here, we're gonna pass the parameter JSON string inside that function. So let's run for first test. Let's see how it's going to display. Now we can see it's performed network request well. Okay, so this step we're gonna make change by mixing those data with the net2add in the Recyclerview by using the offset number. So in the Recyclerview adapter class, we're gonna define a variable to store the offset value. Let's say static final int equal to 5. This means we're gonna show an ads on every 5 data items. And then in here, we're gonna define another collection for store the ads in separately. We're gonna say array list unify net2ads ads equal to new array list. Okay, after that, we're gonna remove this notify dataset chain, both in setData and the setAds method. The reason that we remove this because we don't want to notice to Recyclerview items on every we set data into it. But we're gonna do that only once when our data is ready. Okay, so this time we're gonna create a method which is handle data and the ads with the offset value. And we will call this method when our data and the ads are ready for display. Let's say mix data. And then we're gonna check if there's no data, we're gonna return. At this part, we will looping the employee data, which is contained in the data variable. Now let's create a temporary list to store all the data that we will mix together. And then we're gonna do loop the data by for loop. And here we're gonna using offset value plus with the other local variable. Then the condition when every each loop, if it is equal to the index, we will insert the add into the temporary collection. Let's say int num equal to 0. Then we increase the num with the offset value with another +1. Why we need to plus number 1 in here? If we didn't plus that, it would not show in ordering offset value. Okay, so let's imagine this. For example, we didn't plus number 1 over here. When I start from 0, in this case num is 0 and the offset is 5, that will not equal to. So means that 5 is not equal to 0, right? And then until loop I equal to 5, and this block will execute and we're gonna insert add into the position 6 because the collection is 0 base index. Okay, now num variable is plus offset, which is 5. So the next loop is gonna be I equal to 6 and num is 5 plus 5 equal to 10. So means that add would insert at position 11. That we need to plus number 1 in here. Okay, I hope you understand. But in our adds can have more than one adds. So we're gonna random get value by the index. Then we're gonna add into the collection. And for else, we're gonna add our employee data into the collection. After that, we're gonna clear the old data, then we add all new data that we have mixed. So it seems like we do new data. Okay, over here array or collection, when we access by index, and if there no item exist, there's gonna be throw an error exception. So we're gonna wrap this block of code with the condition. Let's say if adds.size bigger than 0, and then we're gonna do this. So at the end of this, we're gonna call notify the data change to notify all data in the Recyclerview items. Okay, now we finished doing on mixing employee data with the adds in this method. Then we're gonna go back to the scan activity and we're gonna define the global integer for count how many times adds has been loaded, either add load to fail or success. Let's say count equal to 0 for initialize, and then we're gonna define another constant, the number of the adds when we make the batch add request. So we're gonna say add underscore count equal to 2 because we want to request 2 adds at a time. Okay, actually we already passed the value into the method create unified adds over here. We have changed this into the constants because we will use this value later on when we check some condition with the count value. So then let's replace the number with the variable. Then we're gonna increase count value in the unify native add load and add load to fail methods. So we're gonna say count plus to increase the value, and then we're gonna check the case if the count equal to adds count, and then we're gonna call mix data. So then on unify native add load, we're gonna remove this block statement because we will check manually with the number of the load adds again. Then the last thing that we're gonna call this method again is that when the data is responded. So let me summarize what we have done again. In the Recyclerview adapter class, we have created a mix data method to mix all of those data by using offset value with a native add. And then we will call add once when our data have requested successfully. And here we have an offset value that we can change easily whenever we want to add display on every 5 items or 3 items. And then in the second activity class, we create a send request method. When we request success, we're gonna check the count value equal to the number of the ads that we make the request. And then we're gonna display our data. And this count value, we do increase count when we make add request, either fail or success. And this should equal to add request, so that we can know that ads are already loaded from all of the requests. Okay, so let's run this app. We're gonna click on this button and just wait a moment because it's a process request at the background. Anyway, if the real reject, we should play something loading in the activity. Okay, now we can see the ads list with the offset value with the employee. Remember, we have set the offset value to 5, and the item position at 5 is show up with the end of employee data, and then the ad display. And next, after another 5 items, we have an ad again. Okay, so now that's all for today. I'll place the link down below if you want the source code. And today I will show you how to request a rewarded ads, display it, and handle the callback to exchange some kind of reward. And this is my simple apps to exchange the coins when the user gets a wrong word by displaying the rewarded ads. Now let's take a look how to get started. Here I'm going to create a new project in the Android Studio, and I have placed the dependencies as SDK in the build.creator file in the app level. And I also added the app ID in the Android manifest file. And then I'm going to initialize the ads SDK in the main activity on the create method. Next, I'm going to create a private reward ad object on the top of the method. And then I'm creating new methods on request ad. For instance, reward ads and handle request at load. So I'm gonna assign the reference to the private rewarded object. And here I need to pass the activity context and the rewarded ads unit ID, where you can find it in your Admob account. And then create a rewarded ad load callback and override it to methods. And these two methods will notify it when the ad loads successfully or registered in error. As you can see the name of the method. All rewarded ad load methods is called when the ads load success. So I'm going to toss the message in here. The next method is on reward ad fail to load. It's handled when there is something wrong with the ad request. And I also can request a new rewarded ad and make sure set the limiting request to avoid the recursive. And the last statement call the load ads methods from the rewarded ads object. For first parameter, I will pass the new request and the callback that I just created. And now let's create a new method for displaying full screen ads, and I'm gonna name it as on show rewarded ads. For very beginning statement, I'm gonna check the ads is ready to load or not. If it's not ready, I'm gonna do nothing. And here I can pre-check its amount of the rewarded ads by using the private reference ad object, so that I can put the dialog to tell the user how much they can earn if they watch the video ads. And then I'm gonna instance rewarded ads callback and overriding for method. The methods on user earn the reward get called after the user watched the full ads plays and earn the reward. And the other methods beside this are optional, but I'm gonna implement it, especially on rewarded ad close, which can help me to instance new request ads inside it. So I'm gonna call on request ad method once again in here. For the last thing to do is to show the ads. And to do this by call the show method, and I will pass this activity, and the last parameter is the callbacks that I have defined it. Now I'm going to call on request ad method in on grade to load the first ad. Then in float button click listener, I'm gonna place on show reward ads methods. Now it's time for test the app. This time I'm going to create a very simple game guessing word as an example to show how the reward ads should work. In containment XML file, I'm gonna create text view for show the coins and the edit text for input the text to guess as define ID in here. And I will wrap it inside the linear layout. Now in main activity class, I'm gonna create private integer value for storing coins and initialize value 20. Next, I'm going to create a new method for set the coins value and change the text value. And now it's time for integrated with rewarded ad. In onCreate methods, I'm gonna define a word for guessing. Then I'm gonna call setCoins methods and pass the value of the coins. And next, in float button listener, I'm gonna check the coins value for the preparing show a rewarded ad if less than 1. And last, I'm gonna find edit text view by ID and get the text from it. If there is not much the word, I will deduct coins from the user. And the last one, on user earn reward methods, I will add the coins to the user. And now it's time for running app. As you can see that if the coins have not enough, and the app will show and return some coins to the user so that they can guess in other word more. You can try another ads format tutorial in my video and the link is in the description, include the source code.
Hello guys, this is Cambo tutorial and today we're going to making the native ads in the custom dialog box. And this is the final results that we're gonna achieve today. Okay, so before we go into actual syntax, we have 2 steps to implement the ads in the dialog. For the first one, we will create the XML layout for the custom design, exit dialog, which is contain two buttons, yes, no, and we will put the native ads with the exit dialog. And then secondly, we will create a Java class which is used for interact with the layout that we have designed. Without further ado, let's get started. Suppose that we already installed Android Studio. After we launch this, that's gonna show us this project dialogs. And these dialogs contain different activities templates which give us hands to make Android app quickly. But now we're going to choose an empty activity because we are not going to focus much on making things on the activity. Okay, after that we hit the next button, and this we need to give our application name. So for example, we're gonna call this add dialogs. Okay, for the language we're gonna choose a Java by default, and the minimum API we're gonna leave it there too, Android 5. And the last thing, we're gonna hit the finish button. So then we need to wait a moment until it process done before we get move on. Okay, so before we can show the ads in the Android, we have to insert the metadata inside the Android manifest file for identify which application is using Admob and requesting the Admob. To do this, we're gonna go to the browser and search for the Admob SDK Android, and we can see here this link is the official developer page. Then we're gonna scroll down here and we're gonna copy this. So then we go back to the Android Studio, open up the Android manifest file, and then we're gonna place in this children of the activity element. And about this block XML, if we didn't insert when we run the application, that's gonna be crashed, and it's gonna show error message something like Admob SDK was initialized incorrectly, something like this. So okay, then we have to change the value here to the valid one, and this one is the sample Admob app ID. Whenever we work in the development mode, we should use this to avoid the Admob term of service. But when we're going to publish the app into the Play Store, we're gonna change this to your actual ID, which we can find in your Admob console. So let's replace this value with this sample ID. Okay, next we have to import mobile ads SDK dependencies, which allow us to making the ad request to the ad inventory that's gonna return into the different ads assets based on what we have implemented in our code. To do this, we have to add a dependency in our Creator file, which is located in the app level. Now let's go to the browser, and then we're gonna copy this line. Then we're gonna go back and open the file build.creator, this one, not this one, okay? Then we paste it back in the dependency section. Now we just insert the ad library, and we can speed up on making design ads from scratch. We need the template ad, and the template ads we can use the sample template ads that they have designed already. There are two templates which you can choose, with the smaller one is suitable for the implement in the Recyclerview, and the medium one is better to implement in the dialog or directly insert into the activity. Okay, let's go back to the browser. We click on the native ad here, and then the native template. Okay, so we can download the template here, but before we do that, let's scroll down and we can see the sample template one. It is small and the one is the medium. So inside the template ads that we're going to download, it have a template design already, and we can pick up one of these layout files when we implement it in the Android project. Okay, so let's go back and we're going to download that template by hitting this button, and then it's will navigate it to the GitHub project. So we click here and then download zip. After we download, we're gonna extract the zip file, and then we're going to import the module into our Android project. So to do this, we go to File, New, Import Module. and then find the module that we have extract at the moment. And then we click the Finish button. When we include the module, we're gonna see the project is shown over here. And now we just include the module into our project, and we will not able to use that module yet, because in Android project, if we want some additional libraries or modules to work in our project, we have to add those in the Gradle file. Now let's go to the browser again. Then if we scroll down here, we're gonna copy this line, the Net2 template, then go back to open the file build.gradle again, and we pass it down over here. When we edit something in this file, that's gonna pop up the link over here. So this link will pull all the dependencies that we place inside and other additional dependencies that related to the Add SDK. So now let's click that, and we have to wait a little bit to download the library, and this depends on your internet connection. Now we went so far on configuration Add SDK in a general, but we not have done implement on a real syntax yet. So firstly, I have said that there are two steps to do with. First step, we're gonna create a layout XML file, which will contain the template view and the exit dialog. To do this, right click on the layout, new, XML, layout XML file, and we're gonna call this exit dialog. And for root tag, we're gonna leave it by default, and then we're gonna click a Finish button. Okay, now we have created an empty XML layout file, and we're gonna make like an example here. You can follow me or skip this part, because I have set the timestamp so that you're gonna easily navigate to the part that you want to see. This main wrapper for layout height, I'm gonna set into the wrap content, and the orientation to the vertical. This ad is attached on the top of dialog, so we're gonna insert that firstly. To do quick, let's go to the browser, and then we go scroll down to this, and then we're gonna copy, and we go back and paste in over here. For ID, we're gonna call add template. For template type, if we want to medium size, we just change to the layout to the medium here. And now we have done on placing ads. Then we're gonna work in the dialog box. So we're gonna create inner layout to wrap the content dialog area by saying linear layout. We're gonna set the padding into 15 dp, height, wrap content, orientation is vertical. And then the title dialogs, we're gonna use the text view. The width is wrap content, the height is wrap content, text exit, and then we're gonna set color to the black. And the text size we're going to set 25 dp to make a little bit bigger, and it should be bold text. And it's in close to the border. Let me set into the layout margin to the 10 dp. Okay. Then we're gonna set the message content. We're gonna copy that. Just change the text. Do you want to exit? And change the text size to the 18 dp. So then the last one in the dialogs is the button. The buttons here are the left and the right, which is sit after another in the x-axis. So we're gonna call a new linear layout because we want to change the orientation into the horizontal one. And width and height is going to be a wrap content, and the orientation is horizontal, and that's what will look nice and standard if we set the layout gravity to the right. Okay, then we're gonna create two buttons inside this linear layout. The first button that's gonna be yes, So the ID, we're gonna set the btn underscore yes. Width and height is going to be a wrap content, and the text is yes. So if we want to remove the gray color background here, so we're gonna set that into the transparent background. And then we're gonna copy this and pass it to create another button. And then we just change something a little bit like a text to no and ID btn underscore no. Okay, cool. Now we have done on the UI. So to make this UI can interact with the user, we're going to create a class which is our step 2. So right click on this package, new class, and we're gonna call the exits dialog. And the superclass, we're going to extend it from the dialog, which is from the package android.app. Because we are going to do the custom dialog, that's why we have to extend from it. When we extend from this class, there is no default constructor, so we have to create a constructor which have 2 parameters. One is the activity, and then the objects of the native ads that we're gonna pass it from the main activity class. And then we have to pass the context in the activity to the constructor of the superclass by saying super, and then pass the activity content into the parentheses. Now we can get these parameters from here, but we may not be able to use in the other methods in this class, so we have to define the global variable. Let's say unified native add, and the activity. And then we're gonna assign those parameters to the global variable. Okay, now this class we have to override method on create, because we haven't inserted the dialog layout that we have designed into this class yet. So overriding on create, then by default the dialog have its own title part, and we completely design everything already, so we're gonna disable that by saying request window feature no title. Okay, then we're gonna set the layout view into that. The resource layout name exist underscore dialog. Okay, now we are able to call all controls which are inside that layout. I mean the buttons and the add template. Okay, we're gonna find those by the reference ID, button yes, find view by ID, and the button no. And then we're gonna implement the action when we click on those buttons, and we're gonna call the activity.finished to exit the app, and no, we're going to dismiss the dialog. And now the action in the dialogs is complete. Then the last things in here is set add object into the add template. To do this, we're going to find the ID add template, and this will return as the template view object. So now we're gonna call add, and actually when we make the add request from the main activity, we're not really sure that it's gonna successfully retrieve the add, or sometimes the internet connection is not going well, or sometimes a leak of ads inventory. And if so, that would be nice to set the ads template into the invisible. So we're gonna check if condition there's no ads, we're gonna hide, and else we're gonna show, and then we're gonna set the object ads into the add template. And now everything is nearly done. Let's go to the main activity class. When we launch the activity for the first time, on create, it's gonna call. So we have to preload the ads by making the ad request. For every first line, we're gonna initialize the ad SDK by saying mobile ad.initialize, and then we pass context. Then the last argument is the callback. At this statement, we're gonna call ad once, and then we're just making the ad request with the ad loader builder. For the first argument is the context activity, and then the native ads unit ID. Here we can place the ads unit ID that you can find in the Admob console, but for testing we recommend to make it with the sample one. So let's go back to the browser and we're gonna go to this page, and then we're gonna copy this unit ID for a native ad, and then we're gonna pass it over here. After that, we call the build with ad listener. We're gonna listen on the action related to the ad. For native ad, except on ad load method, we can use all the methods to check the action. In this case, we're gonna implement it on ad load to false, so that we're gonna know if there's problems when making the ad request. Okay, to get the native ad object, we're gonna use the builder dot for unified native ad, and then we implement the callback. Because we're doing a preload ad, so we're gonna define the native ads in the global scope to use it later on. And then we set the value into it. And we're gonna toast the message so that we're gonna know if the ad is load ready. Okay, now we have done on making ad request. For the last thing that we're gonna do is to show the dialog when we hit the back button. To do this, we're gonna override method which is called onBackBraced. Then inside that, we're gonna instance the objects of the exist dialog, the activity content, and then the object native ads that we have making the request. And finally, we're gonna call a show method to display the dialog. Alright, we went so far on implemented, and now it's time for running test. Okay, so I click back button, the test ad is shown with the dialog box. And one more thing, we also can maximum the size of the dialog to match its parent content. So to do this, over here we're gonna call that object dialog get window, and then window.set layout. For the first parameter is a width, and then we're gonna extend it to the maximum match parent, and the height is gonna wrap content dialogs. Okay, then we run once again. Okay, it's worked fine, and you can see the border here is maximum to the parent content. Okay, so this is a bit longer video, but I hope this would help who want the tutorial from scratch making this native ads in the dialogs. And if you're new, please give me subscribe and share this video, and see you all in the next video.